It really started when he was a little boy. Right there in Boyle Heights, a Latino community, Mexicans were not allowed to swim in the swimming pool, except on a Sunday evening because they were going to disinfect the pool the next day. And my father was just a young boy, and he boycotted with a friend of his and then walked from Boyle Heights all the way to City Hall to protest the fact that Mexicans were not allowed to swim at Evergreen. And that policy was changed. My father and my mother were the center of our life, and they are the ones that modeled for us the importance of family, importance of community. My father's influence really was indirect in that he modeled for me and our family the importance of public service. And as a result, myself, my sister, and my brother, we have all gone into some kind of public service.
I had the honor, first, of working for him his last 2 years in Congress. And when I'd pick him up from the airport, that little drive back to his house, he would tell me stories. The story about him running for office is just fascinating. When he came back for the war, he got involved in helping people with health issues. And that was his passion. People told me, I'm going to run for office. And I go, what is that all about? He says, what happened was he was going to have this big health fair. The funders that were funding it came to him and they said, Mr. Roybal, you want this money for your event? You got to run for city council. What? So in essence, he was kind of blackmailed to run for city council.
Yeah.
And he's like, excuse me? He goes, we need you to run. Because up until that point, they were running Latino candidates against the incumbent for city council and losing and losing and losing. And this committee of 10 business owners, they said, well, we need somebody that's clean-cut, honorable, respected, who has a great reputation. And one of the committee members said, Edward Roybal. But he's a healthcare guy. No, we're going to get him to run. He's not into politics. We're going to get him to run. So they all said, when they came up to him, they told him, you're running. So he was telling me that he went into his wife's, his home, and then told his wife, honey, we're not going to buy that house in El Sereno. She was like, why? I'm going to be running for city council.
When my father got elected to the Los Angeles City Council in 1949, there was a lot of discrimination and racism. And when he was inaugurated, and it was his first meeting at the City Council, he was introduced. And they introduced him as the Mexican councilman who speaks Mexican. And my father had a prepared speech, and he put down the speech and responded to that comment, and made it very, very clear that he was an American of Mexican descent and that he was proud of it.
He experienced discrimination firsthand.
No fue fácil, sufrimos mucho, muchos desprecios, pero siempre nos acordábamos que si nosotros podíamos abrir la puerta, como se dice, para que otros hispanos siguieran.
This is something that I'll never forget. And I'll never forget it because this was the evening that I asked my wife to marry.
Edward Roybal, one of the first Mexican Americans elected to Congress, experienced discrimination firsthand.
And the policeman lined us all up, about 14 couples, made us put our hands up over our heads, and they went through our pockets. Then they asked each one of us to show credentials. I gave them my wallet, and after they looked at it, this policeman started to take my cards out of my wallet and drop them to the sidewalk. And then after he did that, he said, now you pick them up. I remember getting on my knees and picking them up. This is something, of course, that a man that had just asked his best girl to marry him will not forget.
What makes Ed Roybal a giant is that he took on issues not just that were Latino.
I went to a community event with my dad, and an elder Japanese man stood up, and he says, I was at the meeting, he said, where they were talking about putting us in camps, and a young man by the name of Edward Roybal stood up and said that this will be the shame of this nation.
Back in the early 80s, when people didn't know what AIDS or HIV was, he was truly the first congressperson in the nation to fight to get funding for AIDS research.
Wow.
And when we went for the dedication for the Center for Disease Control, the president there said he was in the room when my father appropriated the money for AIDS research and that he was jeered by some of his peers. And later I said to my dad, I said, Pop, I said, you never told me that story. What did they do? And he says, oh, he says they blew me kisses and weak wrists and, you know. But my dad had the guts to do it, and he had the sense of justice. He really believed in what we call now single-payer health care for all people. And he wrote one of the first universal health care bills, even before Ted Kennedy. We were harassed by the LAPD for years, just for years.
One of the earliest things I remember as a young child is being told that if I was ever stopped by a cop, I was to start running and run all the way home and not stop till I got home.
A vote to raise the pay of policemen. And I remember some community members saying, and I won't say, I was going to say it in Spanish, but I won't say it. No seas tonto, I'm going to say tonto. Don't be dumb at Roybal. You know what the word is, though. You know, this is a time to show them, you know, you're a councilman, you have power now. Show them, you vote against that raise. And I'll never forget this. I was a little kid. I was sitting under the dining room table playing with dolls, listening to this. And my father said, when you respect people, when you pay them well, when you give them health care, when you are decent, the quality of the profession will rise. And my father voted for a pay raise for police. Dad used to say to us, you can't become the thing you're fighting. Yeah, few people know that my dad played the guitar and sang.
Well, okay.
And when he was a young man, he and his uncles would play at the Orpheum. You know, they used to show a movie and then they would have vaudeville. He and his uncles would play. And my dad wrote a song called Dueña de mi Corazón. And he wrote it for my mother. And my dad...
He's just an all-around good guy. I mean,
he was a very loving man. He used to sing to us at night, you know, me importas tú, y tú, y tú.
Many people don't know him. He's a quiet guy. He's not an overpowering... It's not about him. It's